Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome back, guys. Today, I want to cover a very important topic. It's about the career woman and the successes, failures, and challenges, okay, of the women's empowerment movement. Now, why this is an important topic is because we know that while the Western world has done well with regards to women's empowerment, we also know that there has been some hiccups along the road. And while many of us in the non-Western world, in the Arab-speaking world, in the Muslim world, are venturing out towards women's independence, we can do well to learn from some of the mistakes of our predecessors. Okay, there's no need for us to follow the West, to follow America, to follow Britain blindly and sort of emulate, you know, the flops that occurred along the way. Okay, yes, there was a lot of positives, but there were also negatives. So the challenge for us here in the Muslim world is to see how we can benefit from some of what we learn from our counterparts, but also where we can perhaps offset some of the problems that they are currently facing as a result of the types of policies they have pursued that we might also be on the brink of pursuing. Okay, so this is not a a a an attempt to say that things are all rosy, you know, in the non-English speaking world, in third world countries, in the Islamic world also, but that we can definitely take things which have salt. We can learn, we can adapt, we can evolve, but let's do so with caution, okay? And so this is kind of where I'm coming from. I'm also coming from a perspective of saying to women that while you will have greater freedom and independence, use the information at your disposal to choose wisely, make wise decisions, okay? Especially since in the past many women did not have the opportunities or the kinds of opportunities that they will have moving forward, okay? And so when you're faced with so many things to choose between, how do you choose? What are the considerations you need to have as a woman, okay, specifically? And those are the kinds of things we will be getting into here today. The career woman, woman's empowerment. Okay, the grievance. Men control women with money. When men were designated the job of breadwinner and women the job of homemaker, men could and would control women with their money. Women weren't free to make their own decisions because they were being held accountable by a man who had the power to make their lives inconvenient. Women had to be obedient to their husbands. There was little recourse to get away from an abusive husband because poverty was often the only other prospect. The solution: economic empowerment. So in the West, to deal with some of these problems, they developed policies, legal policies, that would give women greater access to the job market. Okay, so this was one way to deal with some of the problems. If women all have jobs and are self-reliant, their husbands or partners cannot exploit them through economic means. Women would be able to exercise economic freedom, which will give them greater personal freedoms as well. The economy would improve because there would be an increase in available labor, which would reduce the cost of labor. Women are often prepared to do more for less because they are generally more agreeable. Higher literacy rates amongst women would improve literacy rates in general because a more educated parent raises more educated children. So as we can see, there were definitely improvements and benefits. Okay? The results. Now that we've done it. So in the West, we've already experienced the cycle, to its completion, and we have the results. The results are in. Okay? Many women still want kids and find it hard to balance between a career and motherhood, often failing at one or the other or both. So in the West, a lot of very successful career women struggle to be mothers and raise their children adequately, often feeling guilty for not being present in their children's lives. Many women still expect men to be providers, despite that they have actively reduced the price of male labor by flooding the labor market and being willing to work for much less. So though women may occupy half of the jobs in enlightened economies, so to say, of the West, okay, many Western women also have the very similar expectation that Eastern and Muslim women have, and that is that men should provide. Okay, how this pans out in real life, you will see below. Women who make it in their careers tend to be single because they cannot find a suitable, stable partner. The number of men who are equally successful are diminishing, whereas the men who are more successful do not want competitors as wives. So guys, we know that men generally tend to marry across and down the dominant hierarchies, and women tend to marry across and up. So women who are very high up on the hierarchy, on the ladder of success, they tend to go for men who are equal and above them. And of course, because they have reached a high level already, there are only but a handful of suitors, okay, that she would deem suitable for her as a partner. Hence, that disqualifies most men, which is it's likely that she will remain single, because again, those men who are above her in status would much rather go for either people of equal status, which then might be above her status, or below their status, but who are not competitors, okay, who are not trying to do the same thing they do, basically. Most married women file for divorce because men are unable to meet their ever-changing standards. Okay, there's a stat I read recently that in the United States, 70% of all divorces are filed for by women. Some of the reasons cited are that they are just not compatible, that he just does not give me enough attention, and I have outgrown him intellectually, whatever that might mean, etc. Okay, it is all what in the old world we'd call superficial reasons, okay, but they are very serious and very real in first world countries because there is not much else to focus on. They are not trying to survive, and so they have time to focus on nonsense, basically. Right, new challenges, a career and or kids. The common grievances. Men are not fulfilling their role as providers, and therefore we, as women, have to be breadwinners and mothers. This is unfair. Before, when men were designated breadwinners, it was also unfair that women were not given equal opportunity to similarly earn money, not become breadwinners. Again, women's grievance was that they were not equally able to earn money, and they did not complain that they were not breadwinners, okay? You don't complain about the responsibility that you might undertake. You complain about a right that you don't have, okay? So this narrative was seen as men have the right to work and women don't. So women should therefore equally have the right to work, but not equally become breadwinners. Hence, in both scenarios, women are victims of men. There are victims when men provide, and there are victims when men don't provide. So women often complain that men don't provide, and then in a society where men are largely the providers, women complain that they don't earn money in the same way, or the same amount of money, or at all, for that matter. Okay, I want to spend more time with my kids, but I can't because I have to work. Common grievance. I want to work, but I can't because I have to be at home with my kids. Okay, the grievance is also reversed. For those housewives that think the grass is greener on the other side, they find that their kids are in the way. Okay, I wanted to get married and have kids, but I ran out of time because of my career. Those are women who choose their career over anything else in their youth, and then find out later on in life that they can no longer have kids because they've hit the wall. Biological clock has run out of time. My kids and my husband stood in the way of me having a successful career. So those are often embittered older women who feel that their life was a waste, that because they spent it on their kids and on their husband and on their family and not empowering themselves in their careers. Okay, those usually are psychologically ill, damaged women. Right. New challenges: economic shift, a decrease in the price of labor. So the economy, above all things, because the economy is real, okay, it does work on the basis of opportunity costs, and it tells us very, 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 very clearly that you cannot have it all. Okay, if there are 100 jobs available and only 100 men, every man will have a job and can therefore all expect to be providers. So that was the economy of the past, okay, the past thousands of years. If there are 100 women who are unemployed because only men are employed, and in the spirit of equal opportunity, at least half of all employed people should be women, 50 men and 50 women will have jobs. Also, 50 men and 50 women will be unemployed. 50% of all men will be unemployed, so they cannot expect to be providers. So you cannot expect men who are unemployed to be providers. Those men who are unemployed because they made way for women to be employed. The price of labor is decreased because of the increase in labor. Employed men are not adequate providers. Okay, so guys, before you say that, why is it that I'm saying 50% of men are unemployed because they gave their jobs away to women, or they made way for women to be employed? This is based on the very realistic assumption that the economy is not unlimited. There are not unlimited resources. This is an economic principle 101, and therefore there are not unlimited jobs. And hence, if there are not unlimited resources and not unlimited jobs, some people will work and others will not. Okay? Where that is gender divided, it was men were working and women were not. But when not gender divided, it would be that a significant amount of both men and women would be unemployed. Okay? That's just a fact of life. The price of labor is decreased because of an increase in the labor market. What does it mean? It means the more workers you have, okay, the less each person needs to get paid, because it puts the negotiating market value, or the price of labor anyway, in the hands of the employer. Okay, your employer can say, look, if you don't agree to my terms, step aside. There are 3 other people waiting for this one job that I want to offer you. Okay, which means that I now, as the employer, have the lion's share of the negotiating power, basically. Okay, the traditional model is unfeasible, as the majority of men and women must work to sustain a family in the modern economy. So because the reduction of the price in labor, okay, as a result of the increased labor force, i.e. both men and women are employable, okay, that means that both men and women would receive a salary today that was equivalent to the salary of one man in the past. Okay, again, both man and woman would jointly together receive a salary equivalent to what was the salary of one person in the past, with the labor the size of labor, the labor pool halved basically because only men or mostly men worked. Okay, that was for various reasons. That was not because of the tyrannical patriarchy, incidentally. It was because most jobs were better suited for men in an era where a lot of jobs involved heavy lifting. Okay, there were not many administrative jobs, office jobs, and retail jobs around back then. Okay. So what happens as a result in the modern economy? Men cannot be breadwinners, and women cannot be homemakers even if they wanted to be. Okay, you have the standard dual income home. That is the expected norm, and that is the shift that has resulted in a increased labor force. Okay, so what do we have? What is the result? Okay, equality. It's fair that men and women are equally employed, and I say, I have an addendum to that. I say, yes, it is fair that men and women are equally employed. That is, if the assumption is that there are jobs available for every person, and that is not the case. Okay? Right, then there are other things that are unfair. So while a man might have 50% of the money and the woman might have 50% of the money in the dual income home, let's say if all things were equal in an ideal world, okay, there are things that are less than ideal, okay? And that is that the unemployed men, okay, are expected nevertheless, though they bring in half the money, okay, or they don't bring in any money at all in this case, those unemployed men are still expected to be providers. Okay, whereas an unemployed woman is being treated unfairly, okay, because of the tyrannical patriarchy. She does not have a job and is being treated unfairly and must be looked after by the state, okay, or by a husband. Okay, unemployed men are losers, right? Whereas unemployed women, well, they can go on to marry employed men and live off of the man's salary as her female entitlement as a housewife. Okay, there's no one minds that convention. Okay, that is normal. Okay, the man must pay child support. Okay, women very rarely pay child support. When women have children out of wedlock, they collect social grants from the government. Men very rarely do. Okay, unemployed men are not mate worthy. Okay, whereas an unemployed woman, she is valuable on the account of being able to give birth and also provide comfort. She still has intrinsic value. Men have extrinsic value. Equality. What happens to the highly employable and successful woman? Okay, so let's compare unemployed woman to employed woman. So the unemployed, they marry employed men, become housewives. They raise kids and run a home, live rich and fulfilling lives, have some husbandly constraints due to being interdependent. So the only drawback is they are accountable to a man to some extent, okay, because the man relies on them for many things. Employed women are financially independent, struggle to find suitable long-term partners. Men tend to marry down and not up, are often lonely as a result, and tend to cycle through several partners because they don't have enough motivation to put up with male sentiments due to lack of interdependence. So because they are not dependent on a man, and the man is not dependent on them in an independent relationship of two independent people, there is very little reason psychologically for them to stick it out in the event of serious disagreements. Okay, it's not a survival mechanism. Okay, for the unemployed woman, marriage is part of her survival mechanism. Right. What happens to the highly employable and successful men? Okay, so unemployed men compared to employed men. Okay, unemployed men are expected to be providers regardless of whether they're employed or not. Employed men are providers. Okay, they go on to marry either unemployed or employed women. Unemployed men seldom marry. Okay, unemployed men are losers. Employed men are seen as winners, and also then they get the lion's share of womanizing. Unemployed men must pay child support regardless of their financial standing, whereas employed men have financial independence. Unemployed men are not considered mate-worthy. Employed men are able to provide for their children if they choose to have any. So the employed man fares better than both the employed woman and the unemployed men, basically. He comes out on top still, okay? Equality, what happens to the highly employable and successful men? So if we look at just employed men versus employed women, okay? So the employed woman, she's not expected to be a provider. So the employed woman is not given the same level of responsibility that the employed man is given, okay? The employed man is expected to be a provider legally and by society, very often in many legal codes, okay? It's still written that way. Employed women are rarely sued for child support, okay? Countries tend not to, in most countries they tend not to sue women for child support. But men are almost always sued for child support. Employed women struggle to find long-term mates, whereas the men, they do find mates easily. The employed women struggle to look after kids, whereas the employed men, just by being breadwinners, they are seen as looking after their kids because they are providing. Whereas an employed woman, even if she does provide financially, she's not seen as looking after her kids. She's seen as not, in fact, looking after her kids, because people still by and large expect women to be the primary caregivers. Is that innate? Is it an innate function, or by design, by biology, biological reality, or is it societal? That's for another day, but I do believe it's innate. Okay. Women who are employed are often, by their own testimony, motivated by independence. I want to be an independent woman. I don't want to rely on no man. I must be, okay, it's a different motivation. Men never talk about independence when they are employed. Okay, men are motivated by responsibility. They want a good job so they can look after a family. Okay, second nature to them. Okay, employed women spend a lot of money on self-indulgence, makeup, shoes, bags, parties, whereas men tend to spend on things that would be in the interest of a family in the long run: investments, houses, cars, education, etc. Okay, also a statistic fact is that out of single parents, men tend to be better single parents. Okay, let's continue. Solutions. So all things considered, women who want to get married and have children should seek out employment that will give them enough free time to spend with their families, even if it is for less pay. So guys and girls, you need to consider what your priorities are. If you want a family and you want children and you want a career, it's not impossible to do relative justice to all, but it's all going to have to take a hit on all sides. In other words, you cannot be the CEO of a company that's going to require 60 hours, 70 hours a week and want to be a wife and a mother. Okay, so you might have to think about working part-time. Women who want to pursue a career and make it to the top, working the 60 hours a week, okay, you should consider the likelihood of never having children, okay, and never being a primary caregiver, and probably that's better for them, okay? You should not have children. Gender-based roles can no longer be enforced, okay? So guys, this thing about men being breadwinners and women being caregivers and homemakers is a thing of the past within the modern economy. If you want to enforce gender-based roles, then you need to enforce economic reform. Otherwise, you cannot enforce gender-based roles. You have to accept that both men and women can be breadwinners and or caregivers and homemakers. So if a woman has to work and be financially liable to support a man and their children, then that should be the case, and it should be legally enshrined. In other words, women should pay maintenance for a husband and children, and also should be sued for maintenance for a husband and a children when she is a financial entity, when she works and earns a living. Okay, because you cannot say, oh, I work and I earn money and I have a thriving career, but my money should not count for anything. It should not have any responsibility attached to it. That is not fair. Okay, traditional gender-based roles can only be fulfilled if women, as a rule, don't work. That won't happen, so it should not be expected of men to provide. The end. So that is my conclusion, guys. Let me know what you think. And also, I would like you to subscribe, like, and share. Okay? And then finally, I mean, what I want to add to this, just one sort of side note, of course, with the Islamic discourse around gender, makes it a bit more complex than the things I've cited. One being that in Islamic law, there are gender-based roles, okay? There are gender-based roles, which is difficult to obviously get away from. For example, men are often, under the pre-Islamic law, designated to be providers, okay? And that being said, okay, in dispensations that want to run according to said law or with that societal norm, jobs would need to be prioritized for men. Jobs would need to be prioritized for men, because one cannot fairly expect men to be providers and not have a job that enable them to do that. Okay, which might mean that in a limited economy where there are not jobs, that women might need to be discriminated against in the prioritizing jobs for men, and especially married men, okay, when that would be the expectation. So think about that. I mean, how would you go about it exactly, and what your values are? I'm not saying that women should do one thing or the other thing, okay, or not have a